The Cartier fountain pen hovered over the prenuptial agreement. For 17 p.m. Tuesday, the library of the Whitmore Estate. All dark wood paneling and leather-bound books nobody read. Just sign it, Margot. Julian's voice carried that particular strain of impatience. My family's attorney assured me it's standard. Standard. The word tasted like copper in my mouth. I looked at the document. 37 pages. I hadn't read a single one. Julian had handed it to me that morning over breakfast, casual as passing the cream. My mother insists, he'd said. You understand. I understood. I always understood. Vivian, Julian's mother, sat across from me now, spine rigid in a queen and chair that probably cost more than most cars. Her Hermes scarf was knotted with surgical precision. It protects the family legacy, she said. The Whitmore name means something. This estate has been in our family for 6 generations. 6 generations. The number settled in my chest like a stone. Of course. I picked up the pen. My hand shook, just slightly. Enough that Julian noticed. Darling, you're not having second thoughts? His fingers found my shoulder, squeezed. To anyone watching, it looked tender. I felt the warning in his grip. No second thoughts. But let me take you back. 3 months earlier. That's when I should have known. 3 months earlier, the law offices of Sterling and Associates occupied the 18th floor of the Marshall Building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Marble floors. The kind of place that charged by the minute. Miss Hartley. Robert Sterling stood as I entered. 72 years old, silver-haired, my grandmother's attorney for 40 years. Thank you for coming. I'd been working at the art gallery on 5th Street when he called. Assistant curator, a position I'd earned through actual work, not connections. Julian didn't know about my job. Thought I volunteered at museums, that my modest apartment was all I could afford. I never corrected him. Your grandmother's estate has been fully settled. Robert slid a leather portfolio across his desk. As her sole heir, everything transfers to you on your 28th birthday. 2 weeks away. Everything, I repeated. The properties, the investments, the trusts. He opened the portfolio, including some acquisitions she made in the last decade that might interest you. The first page showed a property deed. I recognized the address immediately. That's the Whitmore Estate. Yes. Robert's smile was thin. Your grandmother purchased it 11 years ago when the family faced bankruptcy. They were allowed to remain as tenants under a private arrangement. Very few people know the actual ownership changed hands. My mouth went dry. Julian doesn't know. The Whitmore family believes they still own the estate. Your grandmother preferred it that way, she said. He paused, consulting his notes. She said some people need to learn the difference between name and substance. I stared at the deed. My grandmother's signature. Eleanor Hartley. The woman who'd built a fortune in real estate. Who'd taught me that power was quietest when hidden. There's more. Robert turned pages. She's been covering their property taxes for years. Their insurance. Basic maintenance. The Whitmores believe they're paying these expenses themselves, but the money cycles back through a shell company your grandmother established. Why? She never said. But knowing Eleanor. He met my eyes. She was waiting for something. Perhaps for you to need this information. I'd started dating Julian 6 months earlier. Met him at a gallery opening. He'd been charming, attentive, everything a woman could want. I hadn't mentioned my last name's significance. Hartley was common enough. I certainly hadn't mentioned my grandmother. What do I do with this? I touched the deed. Whatever you wish. You're the owner. You can reveal yourself, sell the property, continue the arrangement, evict them. Robert leaned back. Your grandmother left you a letter. I'm instructed to give it to you on your birthday. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to decide who I was going to be. I spent those weeks watching. Really watching. The way Julian introduced me to his friends. This is Margot. She works in the arts. Never my girlfriend or my partner. Just a descriptor. A footnote. The way Vivian inspected my clothes at family dinners. Her lips thinning when I wore department store dresses instead of designer labels. The way Julian's brother, Christopher, made jokes about teaching Margot which fork to use, while Julian laughed. The way none of them ever asked about my family, my background, my life before Julian. I was a blank slate they could project onto. The poor girl grateful for their attention. The outsider who'd elevate her station through marriage. They never wondered why I seemed comfortable in their world. Why I knew the difference between Bordeaux regents. Why I could discuss art history with their collectors. They saw what they wanted to see. On my 20th birthday, Robert gave me my grandmother's letter. Dearest Margot, if you're reading this, you've met the Whitmores. I suspect young Julian has caught your eye. He has his father's looks and his mother's ambition. I bought their estate because Vivian Whitmore once told me that new money could never understand true refinement. This was at a charity luncheon where I'd outbid her on a donated property. She didn't know I was the donor. I let them keep their house because even the cruel deserve shelter. But I wanted you to have a choice, darling. When someone shows you who they are, you can believe them, and you can decide what that belief costs them. The power is yours now. Use it wisely. With love, Grandmother. I folded the letter carefully. Made my decision. I play the role they'd written for me, right up until the moment I rewrote the script. Which brings us back to now. To this library. To this prenup. Margot. Julian's voice sharpened. Sign it. I looked at Vivian. At Julian. At the document that would protect their family legacy. Then I signed. My handwriting was steady this time. Clear. Decisive. There. I set down the pen. All done. Wonderful. Vivian stood. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I'll have the event coordinator contact you about your dress. Nothing too extravagant, of course. We want appropriate. Appropriate. Another copper word. Actually, I said quietly, I should tell you something. Julian froze. What? I spoke to my lawyers today. About the estate. The room temperature seemed to drop. Your lawyers? Vivian's laugh was sharp. Darling, you don't have lawyers. I smiled. It felt strange on my face, that smile. Like putting on armor I'd kept hidden. That's the thing about assumptions, Vivian. They're so rarely checked. My phone buzzed. Right on schedule. The message was from Robert Sterling, documents filed. The notification was delivered 10 minutes ago. I looked up. You should check your mail. Julian's phone chimed first. Then Vivian's. Then the house phone. An antique rotary in the corner that rarely rang. What is this? Vivian stared at her screen. Some kind of joke? Mom. Julian's face had gone pale. I'm getting something from Sterling and Associates? About a lease violation? I stayed seated. Hands folded. The prenup sat between us like evidence at a trial. It's not a violation yet, I said calmly. Just a notice. Your lease comes up for renewal in 30 days. The owner wanted to inform you of some changes to the terms. Lease? Vivian's voice pitched high. This is the Whitmore Estate. We don't lease. We own, do you? I tilted my head. Have you checked the actual deed recently? The silence that followed was exquisite. Julian moved to the desk, fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. I watched his face change as he pulled up property records. Watched understanding dawn like a slow sunrise. This is wrong. His voice shook. This has to be wrong. It says the owner is Hartley Property Trust. I finished for him. Established by my grandmother, Eleanor Hartley. Transferred to me 2 months ago on my 28th birthday. Vivian's Hermes scarf seemed to tighten around her throat. Eleanor Hartley. The real estate woman. The real estate magnate. I corrected gently. She preferred accurate titles. You're related to. Julian couldn't seem to finish sentences anymore. He said your family was modest. You work at a gallery. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment in. I choose to work at the gallery. I choose that apartment. They teach you things about people, choices like those. I stood, smoothed my tarted skirt. You learn who sees you and who sees through you. Christopher burst through the library door, waving his phone. Mother, there's some insane woman claiming we don't own the house. He stopped when he saw my face. Margot, not insane, just informed. I turned back to Vivian. My grandmother bought this estate 11 years ago when your family faced bankruptcy. You were, what was the phrase? Over-leveraged in declining markets? She allowed you to remain as tenants. Very generous terms, actually. Below market rate. She even covered the property taxes. Vivian's hand found the chair back. Her knuckles went white. The money we paid cycled back through a shell company. She essentially let you live here for free while letting you believe you were solvent. I picked up the prenup. This document is very thorough, Julian. Your lawyers did excellent work. It protects all Whitmore family assets from marital claims. I held it up to the light. The pages were thick, expensive, watermarked. There's just one problem. You don't have any assets. This house. Mine. The grounds. Mine. The Whitmore Family Trust. I smiled. Investigated by my accountants last week. It's worth approximately $47,000. Most of that is in a checking account your mother uses for groceries. No. Vivian's voice cracked. The investments. The property's sold by your late husband 15 years ago to cover gambling debts. My grandmother's team discovered that during due diligence. I looked at Julian. Did you know your father had a problem? That he lost everything before his heart attack? Julian's face was gray. You're lying. I have documentation. Bank records. Casino receipts. Loan agreements. I set the prenup back on the table. Your mother has been maintaining the illusion of wealth for over a decade. The cars you drive? Leased. The art on these walls. Sold to private collectors years ago. These are reproductions. Good ones, but still fake. Christopher slumped into a chair. Jesus Christ. Your mother is very good at appearances. I walked to the window. The ground stretched toward the tree line. 20 acres of manicured perfection. She's especially good at making other people feel small so no one looks too closely at her. Margot. Julian started toward me. Do you remember what you said when we met? At the Caldwell Gallery. Opening. I didn't turn around. You said I had surprising taste for someone of my background. You meant it as a compliment. At Christmas dinner, your mother asked if my family knew which side of the plate the bread belonged on. She laughed. You all laugh. My reflection in the window glass looked calm. Distant. Last month, Christopher made a joke about teaching me to golf. So she doesn't embarrass us at the club, he said. The room was silent except for the old clock ticking. I've been a member of that club since I was 18, I continued. My grandmother was a founding member. I just never went because I preferred courts to greens. I turned to face them. Every condescending comment. Every pitying look. Every moment you treated me like charity you were extending. I cataloged it. Remembered it. Vivian's mask cracked. You deceived us. I wore modest clothes and let you draw conclusions. You did the rest. I picked up my thrift store purse. My lawyers will be in touch about the lease renewal. The new terms include a 15% increase to match market rates. Also, the property taxes will now be your responsibility. First payment is due in 30 days. We can't afford. Christopher stopped himself, but too late. I know. The estate appraisal my team conducted last week suggests you're living approximately $40,000 beyond your annual means. You've been using credit cards to cover the gap. I looked at each of them. You have 3 options. 1. Pay the new lease terms. 2. Vacate the property. 3. Sell me something of value to offset the costs. We don't have anything. Vivian's voice broke. You have the Whitmore name, the social connections, the reputation. I paused. And I don't want any of them. But I do want honesty. Julian found his voice. What are you talking about? I pulled a folder from my purse. My hands didn't shake now. New prenup. Drafted by my attorneys. You'll find the terms very different. I handed it to Julian. Watched his eyes skim the pages. This says, this protects your assets. And it provides me nothing in the event of divorce. He looked up. Why would you sign this? Because I don't need your money. I never did. I met his eyes. But I need to know if you're marrying me or my grandmother's estate. Margot, I love you, do you? Or do you love the woman you invented? The grateful girlfriend who'd be honored to join the Whitmore family. I touched the folder in his hands. Sign that, and we marry as equals. 2 people who chose each other. Or don't sign it, and I'll know what you really wanted. Vivian stood abruptly. This is blackmail. This is clarity. I checked my watch, a Patek Philippe that had been my grandmother's. I'd finally stopped hiding it. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to decide about the lease. Julian, you have until our wedding day to decide about the prenup. And if we can't pay the lease? Christopher's voice was hollow. Then you move out, and I decide what to do with a 6th-generation family estate that doesn't belong to the family anymore. I walked toward the door. There are lovely apartments downtown. 1-bedroom places. Very modest. I could recommend some. I paused at the threshold. Oh, and Vivian, my grandmother left me a note about you. Want to know what it said? Her face was stone. She said you once told her that new money could never understand true refinement. This was after she'd outbid you on a donated property. I smiled. She donated that property. She was bidding on her own gift to charity, just to watch you lose. Why are you doing this? Julian's voice cracked. If you loved me, I did love you. That's why this hurts. I looked at the man I'd planned to marry. But you never loved me, Julian. You loved the idea of rescuing someone, of being the prince who elevated the poor girl. You loved feeling superior. The words hung in the air like smoke. 3 weeks until the wedding. Friday until the lease decision. I opened the door. Choose wisely. My grandmother always said that's when people show you who they really are. I left them there, in the library of the house they thought they owned, surrounded by books they'd never read and art they didn't know was fake. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Robert Sterling. Well done. Eleanor would be proud. I sat in my modest Honda, the one I'd kept because it was reliable, not because I couldn't afford better, and let myself shake. This wasn't victory yet. It was the beginning of the end. The question was, how would it end? Friday arrived like a storm you've been watching gather on the horizon. 4:47 p.m. My downtown office, the one I'd finally moved into, on the 22nd floor of the building my grandmother had developed 30 years ago. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture. Photos on the desk, my grandmother and me at my college graduation. Just us. The only family I'd needed. Robert Sterling sat across from me. They're downstairs. All three of them. Together? Julian insisted. Said this was a family decision. Robert's expression was carefully neutral. They have 13 minutes. I nodded. Didn't speak. My throat was too tight. The truth was, I hadn't slept in 3 days. Kept replaying Julian's face when he'd realized what I'd done. Kept wondering if there'd been another way. My grandmother's voice in my head. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Send them up. They entered like people approaching a funeral. Vivian first, chin high despite everything. Christopher next, subdued. Julian last, eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I had anymore. Margot. Vivian's voice was different. Quieter. We need to discuss the terms. The lease terms are non-negotiable. Market rate or vacate. I stayed behind my desk. Distance felt necessary. We understand that. Julian stepped forward. He held papers. We're prepared to. We found a solution. He set the documents on my desk. I recognized the letterhead, Sotheby's. My mother's jewelry collection. Most of it's been in the family for generations. We've had it appraised. He swallowed hard. It should cover 18 months of the new lease terms. After that, we'll find something else to sell. Vivian's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles showed white. Or we'll move out. But we're asking for time. To do this with dignity. I looked at the appraisal. The numbers blurred. I blinked them clear. Your grandmother's engagement ring is on this list. Yes. Vivian's voice cracked. It's worth the most. The ring I'd admired at Christmas dinner. The one Vivian had said would go to Julian's bride someday. She'd been looking at me when she said it. I pushed the papers back across the desk. I don't want your jewelry. Hope flickered in Julian's eyes. Then, I want honesty. Real honesty, not the performance you're giving me now. I stood. Why did you propose to me, Julian? The truth. The room went silent. I loved you, the truth. His shoulders fell. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. You were safe. Kind. You didn't ask questions about money. You seemed grateful. Like you'd never leave. There it was. The copper truth. And you, Vivian? I looked at his mother. Why did you accept me? I thought you'd be easy to control. Her voice was steady now. Honest. I thought you'd be so dazzled by our name that you'd never challenge us. Never ask where the money actually was. Christopher. Julian's brother met my eyes. I thought you were boring, but harmless. Someone who'd make Julian happy without costing us anything. I sat back down. The city sprawled beyond my windows. 22 floors up, the world looked vast and full of possibility. Thank you, I said quietly. They stared at me. For finally telling me the truth. I pulled out my own folder. Here's mine. I did love you, Julian. Even knowing you'd never see me clearly. I loved who you could have been if you'd tried. I slid papers across the desk. New lease terms. Market rate, but frozen for 5 years. No increases. After that, we renegotiate based on your actual financial situation. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. The property taxes are forgiven for the first year. After that, you pay what you can afford. I'll cover the difference. I looked at Julian. On one condition. You go to therapy. All of you. Family counseling. Individual sessions. For 2 years minimum. Why? Christopher's voice shook. Why would you do this? Because my grandmother taught me something. She said cruel people usually learned cruelty from someone. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. I opened my laptop, pulled up files. Your father's gambling addiction bankrupted you. Your mother spent 15 years maintaining a lie to protect you from that shame. That kind of pressure changes people. I looked at Vivian. You became brittle, hard. You put other people down to avoid looking at your own situation. You taught your sons that name matters more than character because character couldn't pay the bills. Tears tracked down her face. She didn't wipe them away. But here's what I learned working in galleries and diners and call centers. I stood again. Most people are desperate to be seen. Really seen. Not judged. Not used. Just acknowledged. I walked around the desk. I'm not giving you charity. I'm giving you a chance to rebuild without the weight of the lie. Sell the jewelry if you want. Or keep it. Use the money you save on rent to actually invest in something real. And the wedding? Julian's voice cracked. The prenup? I pulled the ring off my finger. The diamond caught afternoon light, scattered it across the desk. There won't be a wedding. His face crumpled. Not because I don't care about you, but because you need to figure out who you are without the Whitmore name propping you up. And I need to build something that's mine, not my grandmother's legacy or your family's redemption story. I set the ring in his palm. In 2 years, when you've done the work, if you want to try again, as equals, as people who actually see each other, call me. 2 years. Hope and devastation warred in his voice. 2 years. No contact before then. You need time to rebuild your life. I need time to build mine without wondering if I'm repeating my grandmother's patterns. I moved toward the window. She was brilliant, my grandmother. But she was also lonely. She spent her life teaching people lessons they didn't ask to learn, collecting power she couldn't take with her. I turned back to them. I don't want that. I want relationships built on truth, not leverage. So here's the truth. I'm keeping the estate. I'm maintaining the lease terms I outlined. But I'm also establishing a foundation to help families dealing with financial trauma and addiction. The Whitmore Estate will become its headquarters, I continued. You can stay in the main house for now, but parts of the property will be converted to counseling centers, support group spaces, educational programs. Vivian stood slowly. You're turning our home into a charity? I'm turning it into something useful. Something that helps people instead of just housing ghosts and pretension. I met her eyes. You can be part of that. Help run programs. Share your experience. Turn your mistakes into meaning. Or we can leave, she said quietly. Or you can leave. That's always an option. I won't force you to stay somewhere that feels like punishment. Silence settled over us like snow. Finally, Julian spoke. What if in 2 years, I call and you've moved on? Then I'll have moved on, and you'll have grown anyway. I managed a sad smile. That's the thing about real growth. It doesn't require an audience. They left 15 minutes later. Signed the new lease terms. Took the jewelry appraisal with them. Julian looked back once from the doorway. I didn't wave. After they'd gone, Robert Sterling returned to my office. That was remarkably generous, he said. Or remarkably stupid. Eleanor would say generous. She always hoped you'd be kinder than she was. I pulled out my grandmother's letter, read the final line I hadn't shared earlier. Be better than I was, darling. Use power to build, not just to prove points. I'm trying. I folded the letter carefully. Did you finalize the foundation paperwork? This morning. The Hartley Foundation for Family Financial Wellness. The board convenes next month. He paused. Your grandmother would be proud. Not because you destroyed them, because you gave them a chance to rebuild. After he left, I stood at the window watching the city lights begin to glow in the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed. A text from the gallery. New installation tomorrow. You still coming in? I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. The revenge I'd imagined, total destruction, public humiliation, watching them lose everything, had felt hollow once I'd held it in my hands. My grandmother had given me power, but also a choice about how to wield it. I chose reconstruction over demolition. In 2 years, maybe Julian would call. Maybe he'd be different. Maybe I'd care. Or maybe I'd have built something so much bigger than a marriage to a man who'd needed me to be small. The foundation would launch in 6 months. The estate would transform from a monument to old money into a resource for families trying to rebuild. And I'd keep working at the gallery, keep choosing substance over appearance, keep being the woman my grandmother had raised me to be. Not perfect, not punishing, just honest. The prenup sat on my desk and signed and irrelevant. I fed it into the shredder, watched it become confetti. Some contracts aren't worth the paper they're printed on. The real agreement, the one that mattered, was the one I'd made with myself. To use my inheritance not as a weapon, but as a tool. To build instead of break. To see people clearly, including myself. My grandmother had waited 11 years to teach the Whitmores a lesson. I'd spent 3 months learning one of my own. Revenge is easy, but redemption, real redemption, takes courage. I grabbed my coat, headed for the elevator. The gallery needed me, and I had a life to build that was finally, completely mine. 22 floors down, the city waited. Full of possibility. Full of people trying to be seen. I was done being invisible, but I was also done using visibility as a weapon. Somewhere between those two truths, I find my way. And that, I thought as I stepped into the evening air, was better than any revenge.